right, welcome to Excellent Grades Academy. This is Dr. Byson EM. We continue with our histology practicals, and this is lab 12, which is the integumentary system. Okay, so let's get into this video and then see what is required of us to do in this lab session. The objectives for this lab are as follows: to understand the integumentary system and its functions, to understand the skin, the types of skin, the layers of skin and its derivatives, to understand the various cell types found in the skin and their functions, and number 4, to understand the common pathological conditions associated with the skin. All right, so the integumentary system is one of the 11 organ systems of the body, and it is made up of the skin and its appendages, as we are going to see in this lab. The skin is the largest organ of the body and constitutes about 10 to 15 of the total body mass in terms of percentage. It forms the external covering of the body, and there are two types of the skin. There is thick skin and there is thin skin, the difference of which we're going to note as we move on. Now, the skin has got two layers. It has the epidermis, which is the upper layer, and this epidermis is derived from the ectoderm. All right, so it is the ectoderm, it's of ectodermal origin, and the dermis, which comes from the mesoderm layer, which is of mesodermal origin. The epidermis has got 4 layers in thin skin, but in thick skin it has 5 layers. So there's an additional layer in thick skin, which is the lucidum, stratum lucidum. And it has 4 main cell types and various derivatives. Now, the dermis consists of a dense irregular connective tissue. Most of the times it is areolar tissue and imparts mechanical support to the skin. Now, what are the functions of the skin? Number 1, it acts as a barrier. So it is the first layer of immunity. It serves as innate immunity for the body. Number 2, homeostasis. So it regulates body temperature and regulates body water loss. Number 3, sensory function. So the skin has got a lot of nerve endings there, and it has a lot of sensory or neural corpuscles that enable it to function as a sensory receptor. Number 3, endocrine function. Number 4 is excretion of waste products such as sweat. Okay, now let's look at thick skin. Thick skin has got 5 epidermal layers. So it has an extra layer that is called the stratum lucidum, and there is presence of a large layer of keratin above the apical cells. In thick skin, there is an absence of hair follicles, and the dermis is rich in sweat glands. The common sites where thick skin is found are the palms of the hand and the soles of the foot. All right, so at low power, this is thick skin. Okay, so this is thick skin at low power. Number 1 here, this labeled from this layer up to this layer, this is a layer of keratin. Okay, so this is keratin. So this is a keratin layer. Okay, so we know that the type of epithelia that is found in skin is a keratinized, so it has keratin, that's why we call it keratinized, stratified squamous. So we say it is stratified squamous because it has more than 1 layer of squamous epithelia. So this is a type of epithelia that we find in the skin. It is a keratinized stratified squamous epithelia. So this layer that is in this region here is the keratin layer. So this is the keratin layer. And to here, from here up to here, this is the subcutaneous layer. The subcutaneous layer here is the dermis. So this is the dermis, okay? Subcutaneous layer. So where this keratin is, this is the epidermis, okay? Where the keratin layer is, this is the epidermis. So this layer here is the epidermis. This layer here is the epidermis. And then this layer here, this is the dermis. Okay. So this is the dermis. So 1 here is the keratinized layer. 2 there is the epidermis. And then 3, this here is the dermis. All right. Now, the blue arrows here are showing sweat glands. So these are sweat glands here. So these are the ductal portions of the sweat glands. This is the conducting portion of the sweat gland. Because you know that a gland is made up of 2 things. It is made up of so it's made up of this. This is a conducting portion. So conducting portion of the sweat of the gland. And then this is a secretory portion. Secretory portion. Okay. Secretory portion. Let me spell it rightly there. So this is the secretory portion. So these are your secretory portions. While these here, these are your conducting portions. These here are also sweat glands. These are also here sweat glands. So when you draw it at medium power, you're going to label this as a keratin layer. So this is a keratin layer here. Keratin layer. And then this here is the epidermis. And then this is the dermis. So that is skin. Okay. So that is the thick skin at medium power. This is the thick skin at high power. Okay. So this layer that is appearing blue here, this is the keratin. Okay. Keratin layer. Number 1 here is the stratum corneum. So from here up to here, this is what we call the epidermis. The epidermis in thick skin is made up of 5 layers. 5 layers. But here we only have 4 layers, so this is thin skin. So number 1 here, this is the stratum corneum. Number 2 is the stratum granulosum. Number 3 is the stratum spinosum. And number 4 is the stratum basal, or the stratum germinativum. Okay, so this is the epidermis. This one that follows here, down here, this is the dermis. And in the dermis, remember, we have muscles. So these that are going like this, those are smooth muscles. Okay, so those are smooth muscles, and these are simply blood vessels. So those are blood vessels. So when you draw it at high power, you label these as blood vessels. These are smooth muscle fibers. And then these are the layers of the epidermis. So draw it at high power and label it like that. Okay. So now this schematic diagram, this is not a histological diagram, but this is just a scheme. It's a diagram that shows you the type of cells, 4 types of cells that are found in the skin. Okay. So we start with the layers firstly. So this is the stratum corneum. This is the layer that contains dead keratinocytes. This is stratum lucidum. This is only found in thick skin. You don't find this in thin skin. This is the stratum granulosum. And then these are living keratinocytes that are found in the stratum spinosum. So you should observe this. In the stratum spinosum, you've got living keratinocytes. Whilst in the stratum corneum, you've got dead keratinocytes. Okay, so this is a very important distinction to make. These are Langerhans cells. So these Langerhans cells are simply macrophages that are found in the skin. So these are macrophage cells. They are white blood cells. So their function is immunity. And then these are Merkel cells. Merkel cells, and then these are melanocytes. Melanocytes. So melanocytes, these produce keratin. Okay. So these produce melanin rather. They produce melanin. Okay. The other cells that we haven't put here that are in the stratum basal, that are keratinocytes. So keratinocytes are cells that will produce keratin. So produce keratin. Keratinocytes are cells that produce keratin. So you've got 4 cells. Number 1, keratinocytes. Number 2, melanocytes. Number 3, Merkel cells. Number 4, Langerhans cells. So these are the 4 cells that are found in the skin. These are the 4 cells that are found in the skin. All right. So keratinocytes, Langerhans cells, melanocytes, and Merkel cells. Now let's look at thin skin. Thin skin, the dermis is the major portion of the skin, and the epidermis is thinner compared to the thick skin. The reason why the epidermis of thick skin is thinner than the epidermis of thick skin, the reason why the epidermis of thin skin is thinner than that of thick skin is because the epidermis of thick skin has got 5 layers. So thick skin epidermis has got 5 layers, whilst the epidermis of thin skin, so thin skin epidermis has got 4 layers. 4 layers. So that's why the epidermis of the thick skin is layer than the epidermis of the thin skin. So the epidermis is characterized by the following: thin layer of keratin, has got hair follicles, and has sweat glands, which are sweat glands and sebaceous glands. All right. So now this is your thin skin. What you see here, 1, this is a sebaceous gland. 2, here is the hair follicle. So this is the hair follicle. And this is at low power. So draw at low power. And then at high power, we're going to zoom in how these look. So draw at low power. This is medium power. So this is the hair. Okay. So this is on the hair follicle. This here is the gland. Okay. So this here is the gland. All right. So this here is a sebaceous gland at high power. Sebaceous gland. And in black here, this is the sweat gland. So at high power, thin skin, show the sebaceous gland, show the sweat glands, and show this, the hair follicle. So draw both at low power and high power. Draw both at low power and at high power. Okay. So forget about this. These are only, okay. So just show the sebaceous gland, the sweat glands, and the hair follicle at high power. Okay, so this the blue arrow here is sebaceous gland, and the black arrow here is the sweat gland. Now let's look at axillary skin. Axillary skin is thin skin. So thin skin. So it looks like this. So you should observe at low power the thickness of the keratin layer. So the yellow arrow here is the keratin layer. And this blue arrow here is the sebaceous gland. The sebaceous gland. The black arrow here is the hair follicle. So the hair follicle. The green arrow here is the sweat glands. So when you draw this axillary portion, you should label all of these. You should label the keratin layer, the sebaceous gland, the hair follicle, and the sweat glands. So draw this at low power and draw it also at high power. So this is the high power. Okay, so high power, these here. So this portion here is simply the conducting portion. So conducting portion of sweat glands. Sweat glands. Okay, so forget about this. Forget about this. Forget about this. And then this here, the black arrow here, this is the secretory portion. So secretory portion of sweat glands. Remember we said that our glands have got 2 portions, the conducting portion and the secretory portion. So know the difference. All right, know the difference. What you see here, these that have got lumens here. Okay, lumens here, those are sweat glands as well. Okay. These here is simply connective tissue. Connective tissue. This connective tissue that you see that is white here, this is simply adipose tissue. Okay, so this is adipose tissue. Adipose tissue. And then what you see here, these are simply muscles. So muscle fibers. But our main focus here is the conducting portion of the sweat glands, the secretory portion of the sweat glands, and the connective tissue. That's all. That's what you are focusing on at high power. So draw at high power and at low power. Okay. So can you identify the following? Yes. This is the keratin layer. Keratin layer. Then this is the sebaceous gland. Sebaceous gland. This is the sweat glands. So sweat glands. This is the hair follicle. Hair follicle. And then these are blood vessels here. So these are blood vessels. See, they've got very big lumens. So these are blood vessels here. So this is the skin of the axilla. So you draw this slide here and you label all of these that I've labeled here. Okay. All right. So now the derivatives of the skin, you've got the hair follicles and the hair, the nails and the skin receptors. So this is a diagram that is showing the nail. So this is the little finger. So this is simply the bone of the little finger. Okay, the bone of the little finger. The bone of the little finger has got the most distal bone is called the distal phalanx, and it's got hyaline. So this shows you here that this is the bone. Okay, so now this is the nail. So the nail is a derivative of the skin, which means is that it grows from the skin. Have you seen the nail root here? This nail root is coming from this skin here. This skin here. So it's growing from the skin, going like this. So the part of the nail that is growing from the skin is called the nail root. And then the nail that is just in contact with the skin here, this is known as the eponychium. The eponychium. And then you've got the nail here. Okay. The nail here. And then this part here is called the hyponychium. All right. So the nail is part of the skin. It derives from the skin and it grows from the skin. The other ones are the sensory receptors in the skin. Hey, there's a lot of congestion here. But the sensory receptors of the skin, you have got this one that is near the dermis here. This is called the Meissner's corpuscles. And also in the dermis, you've got these nerve endings here, which are called free nerve endings. And then you've got this part here, which is the Ruffini. So the Ruffini endings. And then you've got this part here. These are what we call Pacinian corpuscles. So these are the sensory receptors that are found in the skin. Let me just list them this side because there's too much crowd in here. Number one, you've got free nerve endings. Free nerve endings. Number two, you've got Meissner's corpuscles. So Meissner's corpuscles. Okay. And then you've got your Pacinian corpuscles. So Pacinian corpuscles. Okay, so these are the types of, and then the last but not the least, you've got the Ruffini endings. So these are the sensory receptors in the skin. You should know where they're found. Free nerve endings are found in the epidermis. And then Meissner's corpuscles are just found in the junction between the epidermis and the dermis. Ruffini corpuscles are found in the dermis. And also the Pacinian corpuscles are found in the dermis, just near the hair follicle. So these are the sensory receptors that are found in the skin. All right. From there, then you have the exercise. Okay. So the exercise that you have are these. What is the difference between thin and thick skin? Number 2, name the 4 main cells of the epidermis and state the function of each. Number 3, what are the erector pili muscles? What are their functions? Number 4, what are some of the common skin conditions you know? Name 4. Okay, so you know albinism and you know all of those. Okay, name 4. For each, state the cause of the condition. Number 5, what are the functions of the various skin receptors? So this is the exercise that you're going to do after the lab. All right, so this has been practical lab number 13. You can register for lessons on +260 975 497790. See you in the next video.